What's up guys, it's Nick2, and today I'll be showing you guys one of the strongest and most fun builds to use in all of Destiny, the infinite grenade spamming Stasis Warlock. As the name implies, with this build you literally have infinite grenades, allowing you to just freeze anything and everything on the map whenever you want, effectively putting the game on easy mode. Not only that, but with this build we'll also have a permanent 40% damage reduction, an extra 60 resilience, 60 mobility, 60 recovery. We have a constant flow of healing and overshields through stasis shards all over the ground, and we have infinite healing rifts, all of which make this build nearly invincible. Not to mention, if you're using a primary ammo weapon, you have a massive 50% increase to your weapon damage, allowing you to just absolutely melt through everything. Being able to infinitely spam grenades is an insane amount of fun, and when you pair it with everything else that this build has to offer, you have one of the strongest and most versatile builds in the entire game. Before I get into the video, I want to give a big thanks to today's sponsor, BenQ. The BenQ Mobius EX2710U offers unparalleled immersive gameplay with a 4K UHD 27-inch 144Hz IPS display, perfect for extremely smooth and high refresh rate FPS gameplay, while maintaining the amazing picture quality of 4K resolution. BenQ's proprietary HDRI automatically optimizes image color and clarity, further enhancing contrast, detail, and even boosting color performance to give you the most immersive gaming experience possible. With built-in 2.1 channel speakers and even an AI noise-canceling microphone, the BenQ EX2710U has everything you could ever want in a monitor. Make sure to check out the link in the description, and a huge thanks to BenQ for sponsoring today's video. Getting into the build, our exotic of choice is pretty obvious here, being the Osmiomancy gloves, because of just how ridiculously strong they are. These gloves give us a second charge of our cold snap grenade. It's going to enhance the tracking capability of our cold snap grenades. It's going to make the tracking bolts on the ground travel 35% further, but also every time one of the tracking like ice layer bolts on the ground hits an enemy, it's going to grant you a massive amount of grenade energy, and the amount of grenade energy that you get is dependent upon which type of enemy you hit. Each cold snap grenade that you can throw is going to chain to multiple targets, so you're immediately going to get a massive portion of your grenade back as long as there's multiple targets around. This gets even crazier is when you pair it with the Warlock Stasis Aspect Ice Layer bolts, where when you shatter frozen targets, one of those seekers will also spawn to then freeze nearby enemies. This seeker that spawns is also going to give us grenade energy as a result of us wearing the exotic gloves, further enhancing our grenade energy regeneration. Pair this with the right mod setup and boom, we can just throw one grenade, have it chained to everything, get a whole bunch of our grenade energy back, and basically just infinitely spam our grenades. Before we get into the mods, let's first take a look at the rest of our aspects and fragments that really round out the build and truly make it insanely strong. For our next aspect, we have two options. In the gameplay here, I'm using Glacial Harvest, which spawns stasis shards anytime that we freeze an enemy, and it actually spawns a crazy amount of them. By default, this refund a good amount of our melee energy, but we don't really care about our melee. The main reason that I'm using this is just I wanted additional healing with the Whisper of Rhyme fragment, which also gives us some overshield, which is pretty nice. I found this insanely useful for just playing very aggressively and easier content, being able to just have all that extra healing throughput. However, the Bleak Watcher aspect is beloved by many Stasis Warlock players, enabling you to turn your grenade into a stasis turret. Generally, I don't think this turret has a lot of value in easier content, but I definitely can see the value in harder stuff like Grandmaster Nightfalls, etc., in which case I would simply just replace Glacial Harvest with the Bleak Watcher, and I would just take off Whisper of Rhyme. Hopefully that makes sense and I don't get a ton of hate for this decision, but of course, feel free to use the grenade turrets if you're a huge fan of them, and if you just, prefer them. Ultimately, it is just a preference. Just know that you'll be missing out on the pretty nice healing that Rhyme does provide. When it comes to the rest of our fragments, Stasis has some of the best fragment options in the game, with one of the most broken ones being Whisper of Hedrons, which basically gives you 60 recovery, 60 mobility, 60 resilience, anytime that you just freeze a target with stasis, and it lasts for a pretty good amount of time as well. So you're just going to have this buff up permanently because we're instantly freezing enemies by using our grenade, so you don't have to worry about getting a bunch of resilience or recovery or mobility on your build. The only thing you need to worry about is getting 100 discipline, and then you can just put stats into anywhere you want, and basically enabling you to have like 100 with 5 stats if you had the right gear for it. So Whisper of Hedrons, absolutely insane, but you don't necessarily need to use it if you don't particularly care about having 100 resilience and 100 recovery. If you could get that good enough, if you have like really good gear, I could very easily see you not using Whisper of Hedrons, but for most people, I would highly recommend this. Next, I have Whisper of Refraction, where anytime we defeat a slowed or frozen target, it's going to give us a massive amount of class ability energy. This is really good because we're just freezing enemies like crazy, and this basically lets us have our rift up 24/7, and having our rift up is not only good for the overshield and just the healing that it's going to provide us, but it also pairs nicely with our mods, which we'll talk more about later. You could certainly take this off if you're not getting as much value out of popping the Rift 24/7, but I do think it's a pretty good addition to the build. And lastly, we have Whisper of Change, which just gives us 40% damage reduction anytime that we are near a frozen target, which is really, really good. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you're using a primary ammo weapon, like any weapon that has infinite ammo, Whisper of Rending is pretty much a must-have. It's going to make you do 50% increased damage to enemies that are frozen. Very, very, very good. Unfortunately, we only have 4 fragment slots, and so many of these fragments are really good, so it's difficult to fit in Rending, but I mean, 50% weapon damage is 100% worth it if you're using like a primary ammo weapon, which there are a lot of really good ones. In terms of which one I would swap out for Rending, you could swap out Rhyme. Obviously, of course, if you're playing Bleak Watcher, Rhyme is the obvious thing to swap out. Whisper of Hedrons, if you already have 100 Resilience and 100 Discipline, you could swap out. You could swap out Whisper of Refraction, although I really like having the infinite rifts pretty much, but that is something that you could swap out. Whisper of Chains, I probably would never swap because 40% damage reduction is just really, really good. My god, this character is so ugly. Okay, when it comes to the mods, this is really what is going to put the build online. There's multiple different ways to set this up, but I'm just going to go over exactly how I have it set up. So I'm just going to go piece by piece here. Starting off with the helmet, I have a Void Siphon because I'm going to be using a Void weapon, but obviously swap this to Kinetic or whatever, Stasis for whatever weapon you're using. I have Powerful Friends on, literally just because, I don't know, you could put on Special Ammo Scout, Heavy Ammo Finder, whatever. And then I have a Stasis Siphon because I am using a Stasis weapon in the primary slot, which I'll go over when we talk more about the weapons. The helmet stuff isn't massively important. Just make sure to have Siphon mods for the weapons that you're using. Powerful Friends is decent just for, giving your allies armor charge if you want. The gloves is really what's important. You definitely want at least 1 grenade kickstart on here. This just gives you a massive amount of grenade energy back, and because we actually have 2 charges of our grenade, it's going to give us even more energy refunded. So this just really helps us with our infinite grenade spamming capabilities with the build. And then I have Void Loader on just so I can reload my Void weapons quicker. Obviously, if you're not using a Void weapon, feel free to swap this out to something else. None of the orb mods really work, unfortunately. It's probably the biggest downside with this build is the orb spawning, but with our Siphon mods and what we have on our class item, orb spawning is fine, but Firepower and Heavy Handed don't really work with the build. I would just go for Grenade Kickstart and then, a loader mod of your choice. When it comes to the chest piece, I went for Charged Up so that I can increase the maximum stacks of my armor charge, which pairs very nicely with Grenade Kickstart and stacks on stacks, so we just get a whole bunch of armor charges every time that we pick up Orbs of Power, which is pretty nice. But you could easily swap this out to damage reduction if you're doing like high iron content. Concussive Dampener for the DR, melee damage resistance for further DR, or you could put this to Sniper or whatever else. Then for the boots, I have stacks and stacks, so every time we pick up an Orb of Power, it gives us an extra armor charge. This is just so our grenade kickstarts can get more value. The more armor charges that we use, the more grenade energy refund we get back. Really just helps round out the build. And then I have Recuperation on for a crazy amount of healing, very good. And then just 1 Weapon Surge. The Weapon Surge isn't that good because we're constantly throwing our grenades, which is then going to delete all of our armor charges, but it is nice to have up here and there. When it comes to the class item, I have Double Bomber to just get even more grenade regen. I just did say that this is a little bit redundant, but there's not really a whole bunch of other good stuff to put on the class item. And then I have Reaper, very, very nice. Anytime we use our class ability, we're going to spawn an Orb of Power. And because of one of our fragments giving us a whole bunch of our class ability energy when we kill a frozen enemy, we can pretty much spam our Rift infinitely with a guaranteed way of spawning orbs very frequently. Paired with our Siphon mods, our orb spawning is perfectly fine. When it comes to the weapons, you have a crazy amount of options here simply because Whisper of Rending is so strong, making any of your primary weapons do 50% increased damage to frozen enemies. Again, a primary weapon is any weapon that has infinite ammo, so the main thing that you're going to want to use there is something like an SMG because they're so strong. Particularly like Osteostriga would be very, very good, especially for higher rank content. 50% extra damage with this. Put on a Kinetic Weapon Surge, you're doing crazy damage with an Osteostriga. Even something like just any Void SMG paired with Volatile Rounds is very good. The Unforgiven is insane because it has Demolitionist, giving you, a whole bunch of grenade energy. But personally, I found that I don't really need it because my favorite weapons with this build, I really like Fighting Lion because it just does a whole bunch of AoE and it's going to one-shot miners anyway, and I just wanted to use something new. But Wave Splitter is probably my favorite weapon in the game currently. I made a separate video on why I think Wave Splitter is just so ridiculously strong, and this doesn't count as a primary weapon, but if I wanted to use a primary weapon, like I said, I'd probably use a Void SMG paired with, Volatile Rounds. Vex Mythic class is really, really good. Literally any exotic primary weapon, you get the exotic damage buff, and you get the extra 50% against Frozen. That's just, you're doing crazy damage. Very, very powerful combination there. Otherwise though, with my combo, I really like using this Deliverance with Demolitionist and Chill Clip, so anytime I, for some reason, messed up my grenade energy, I can just swap this out, and because it's on a special, it gives 20% grenade energy back, so I can just really easily get all my grenade energy back. For the heavy, use whatever you want. Retrofit Escapade is very good, apparently, especially when you pair it with like Bricks from Beyond and Volatile Flow. That's pretty much it for the build. It is insanely versatile. It's a ton of fun to use. You have just a ridiculous amount of tankiness, infinite grenade spamming, your weapons do extra damage. Like, I don't know what more you could want. The only thing that is kind of bad is that the orb spawning isn't perfect. You kind of need to, run to your orbs and play around it a little bit. And also the super for Stasis Warlock kind of sucks for like doing anything other than like ad clearing, and even the ad clearing is kind of slow. But yeah, the build is very easy to play with. You just walk up, throw your grenades, make sure to kill the frozen targets, make sure to pick up all the orbs that you're spawning. Anytime you get low, you can just pop a rift and basically just stand there healing because you have all that massive damage reduction, 100 resilience. You spawn a whole bunch of stasis shards all over the place healing yourself, and you can just heal yourself while standing in the rift. It's one of my favorite builds, and I hope you guys really enjoy it as much as I do. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe for future videos just like this one. Thank you guys, and I will see you later. Peace.